or something like stop before you do this. I mean, if there was something that required you to do that, then you still are going to have, for every cure there's going to be, tomorrow there's going to be something else, but at least that would be a start.
People don't realize though that the danger so often at times outweighs the benefit, right?
Oh.
I mean, the example you gave of taking your birth year off of Facebook. So most people in here probably online bank. If you go through the password recovery models of most online banking systems, one of the things they'll ask you is, as a password reset option, tell us your year of birth. As a password reset option, tell us the street you used to live on. As a password reset option, tell us the name of your pet. Well, I can go on Facebook and pretty easily start figuring out some of that information about people pretty quickly. So it's actually, people don't realize that a lot of the information disclosure they're giving can be detrimental.
Sure. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal today that with your year of birth and state, your social security number can be figured out.
It's a CMU research.
From CMU.
Today's
did that research.
Yeah.
So, well, but just for a minute though, I think that it's important to keep in mind that people have lots of different levels of sensitivity, right? So, one of my favorite sort of current examples of this is a social network called Blippi, which is
That's one I'm not on. Wow.
yeah, well, which is
but
a
soon will be.
but Ari's writing it down.
I'll do it right now.
But this is a social network that basically lets people hook up their credit card transactions to a stream, which then broadcasts out purchases that they've made. And it's extremely popular. Like, you would be shocked the rate of growth that this thing is going through. So you can get on, and if you have a Blippi account, you can literally see, so-and-so downloaded all of these apps on iTunes. They bought, and they're not being tricked into it. The only reason you sign up for Blippi is to broadcast your purchasing decisions. Like, there's no hidden agenda here.
It sounds like what Beacon was doing at one point in time.
Right, but this is completely, like, the only benefit is doing this, right? So the point is that it's completely opt-in and it's completely transparent. I guess the thing that I get a little nervous about is, look, I think making sure things like OAuth are installed all over the place so that we're not phishing people's usernames is extremely important. And I think that any service provider that doesn't take advantage of OAuth for authentication at this point should be, broadcast on every public website as a don't use this service. But I think we also have to understand that, like, everybody has different sensitivities to this, and many people are much more comfortable sharing information than we suspect, and getting in the way of that in trying to give them disclaimers and stuff, I think is a really dangerous recipe, to be honest. So.
By the way, in terms of sharing purchase information, at the drop of the hat, I'll give you older or not so old war stories on a very sort of primeval level, and you might be able to guess who I'm talking about. But one of the great apocryphal stories that everybody swears is true is that relating to the confirmation of a United States Supreme Court justice several years ago. And there was a lot of dissension back and forth. Will he be confirmed? Will he not? And of course, the fight was drawn along party lines. And among journalistic circles, the story that circulated that sort of everybody agreed, okay, we're going to have a vote, is that they had taken this appointee's credit card information to identify all of the movies he had ever purchased or rented, and because the whole sexual proclivity was part of the confirmation thing, the threat was, we are going to release this unless you tone down your character assassination against the people who were whatever. And and as the story goes, I was hearing it from the Sunday editor of the Miami Herald. He said that a particular congressman was going to come on. I can't even remember whether it was Democratic or whatever, and he was supposed to give a code word that was supposed to tell the other party that we agree to your deal. And so he said, call up. It's going to be at the 11 o'clock news, and you just see if he uses this phrase, and he did. And then there was a vote like 2 days later, and whether it's true or not, great story. And that's what you can do now, like that.
So there are a whole bunch of interesting questions around who should own this data, right? So the EU versus US, is it owned by the consumer? Is it owned by the firm that collects it? And then I think there are also a whole bunch of interesting questions around what types of data or what types of settings should we have a legal or legislative response to protect the data? And what type of settings is the market mechanism sufficient, right? I'm perfectly happy sharing my purchase data with Amazon because I believe that they've got enough to lose in this bargain that they're going to protect that. Is Blippi the same way? Not sure.
Yeah. So it seems like there's one of the dilemmas that we're coming to within this panel, one of the many dilemmas, is the difference between communities and individuals associated with data rights, right? In order for a community to grow and expand very quickly, they need individuals to self-select, to provide information, to better target them so that they get greater levels of advertising that are targeted to individuals and can eventually aggregate, anonymize that data, and sell it out to various different parties. But at the same point in time, the individual wants protection on his privacy rights, and in order to join the community, you always have that terms of service. I don't know if anybody's ever read one, right? But I'm a member of, over 24 communities probably. I don't think I've actually had to read through a couple of them. And it's pretty onerous what they have access to. They have access to a lot of information. So when it comes down to it, it's really sort of a value versus privacy issue. You have folks like Zuckerberg from Facebook saying privacy is dead. I mean, there's no privacy anymore. If you're on the grid, people are collecting information about you wherever you are. So I think it comes down to, what Sean said is the various grades of information that's available and how you track that and how you monitor that. And it comes back to the user. It comes back to education of the user. The difficulty is where does the community come in the responsibility to educate their members in terms of what they do with their data? Right? Any thoughts on that? Is that gonna be?
Well, I think Zuckerberg's right, but you have most consumers aren't going into it eyes wide open.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I have a 10-year-old daughter who's just now starting to get exposed to what I lovingly refer to as social crack, which is it's these little stuffed animals with stamps at the bottom of their foot, webkins. Yeah. And just the type of information that gets exchanged in those networks. And they're somewhat innocuous, I mean, as far as like how they control conversations and how they control interactions, but she's starting to get exposed to some other ones now as well. And for her, I find myself constantly having to kind of reinforce, look, you're not going to friend someone you don't know. You're not going to share some information on these sites. And it's, I'm having to constantly fight and explain that concept because they're growing up in a world where it's perfectly acceptable to go online and chat with anybody and upload photos and share all manner of content.
Yeah. It's almost three questions, right? There's a moral question, there's a legal question, and there's a business strategic question. And frequently the answers to those three questions are different, right, for a particular setting. What's best for me as a business versus what's ethical or moral.
But I think when you create a really powerful platform, they're not, right? So I feel like if we had this conversation in maybe 1996 or 97 or 98, and you had said what we're going to do is we're going to look at your search queries and we're going to target the ads based on them, I think you would have gotten strong pushback that was a violation of privacy. And the truth is, you can do great, and there's been lots of great user studies done today that show that for some queries, people are more interested in the ads that Google shows them than the organic results. Like, you go search for running shoes, you're probably more interested in what somebody paid to put a running shoes ad in front of you than who has, in white or black hat managed to get to the top of that result. And so, I think the problem that Mark has and the problem that you guys are still wrestling with is that in some situations, I think we found the right advertising, the right commercialization where the user feels good about it. Facebook Beacon was a great example of where we didn't find the right equation, right? Somebody's buying a engagement ring, gets broadcast out to Facebook, that was a unfortunate set of PR for Facebook.